As a first-generation college student, Christine values education, holding a bachelor's degree from California State University, Fullerton, a master's of science in education from the University of Pennsylvania, a non-profit graduate certificate from George Mason University, and a wellness coaching certificate from Coastline Community College. Please join me in welcoming Senior Programs Director Hernandez. Our second panelist is Jocelyn Yao. From an early age, public service has been a part of Jocelyn Yao's life and a source of growth and inspiration. Growing up in a working-class immigrant family, her family emphasizes the importance of giving back and community service. Council member Yao has 10 years of experience in politics and has worked at all levels of government in the United States. She won her election for Eastville City Council in 2018 with a 40-point margin at the age of 23. And at the age of 25, she became the youngest woman of color to serve as mayor of California City. She also serves as the chair of Riverside Transit Agency, Transport Now Northwest Chapter. She obtained her master's degree from Harvard Extension, her bachelor's degree from University of California, Berkeley, and her associate's degree from Norco College. Please join me in again to welcome Council Member Yao. All right. To our panelists.
Thank you. Making sure it's on. Is it, okay. Go. Okay, so we always start some of our programs like this with a moment of just centering and thinking about some of our other women who have been activists. And so this is actually one of my favorite ones, and especially in this 2024 election cycle, I feel like I have lived 10 years in 1 week sometimes, or vice versa. But I think about this as, people are tired sometimes. Sometimes you have these different leadership experiences and whether they're positive or challenging. I love this one because it's every moment is an organizing opportunity, every person a potential activist, and every minute a chance to change the world. And so if you get a rough day the day before, today's another day. And thinking about all the amazing things that you all can do in your own community. So we'll kind of go past this unless you want to add anything here. Yeah. I will say in terms of running for office, I am a 2-time loser. So I lost twice. In fact, the second time it was so tiring that I had my son prematurely 6 weeks later. Running while pregnant is a whole other thing. But I say this because if you've ever thought about running for office and you're like, I don't want to lose because I don't want that on my resume, I don't want the shame, pick yourself up. You can live to tell the tale, and then you can get sworn in another 2 years or another 4 years. So it's not the end of your story. It's just a different part of the chapter. So Ignite is a movement of young women who are ready and eager to become the next generation of political leaders. Both Jocelyn and I are so proud to work at Ignite. We love being able to work with the young women that we do and just seeing the amazing work that they all do in their communities. So why we talk about this, and especially finding political power in young women specifically, we know, and some of this may not be surprising to you all, but women are underrepresented in elected office, boo. Of the 520,000 offices in the United States, about 23.7% are women in Congress, 29.2% are in state houses, 18% are governors. I think you all know, and this is one of the things that my 9-year-old daughter gets very riled up about, is that we have never had a woman governor in California, which is both shocking, and really you look at, especially people of color, it's even more shocking, but also at the same time not. 22% of our mayors identify as women. So we're so proud to have someone like Jocelyn, who has been one of the youngest women mayors. So we need 140,000 more women serving in elected office to reach parity. And most of these offices that you're going to see on your ballot this election cycle are at the local level. The way that we talk about it is, down ballot. Everybody talks about the presidential race, but you'll see there's a number of races that are even more important, or ones that you feel even more in your day-to-day. So our work, the way that we kind of think about it in empowering young women and gender-expansive youth is that I think of this, coming from my own background as almost like our own version of Loteria, where you have these different identities. And so you've got the voter, the activist, the policymaker, the campaigner, the candidate. All of us enter political space, whether or not we even think about it on a day-to-day. But these are a number of different program tracks that Ignite provides.
So, what we'll be doing today, you'll actually have to put in some work. It's not just us talking. So we'll start with this. We'll begin the breakout session with this. Take like maybe a minute to think about what is the one issue that you really care about, or what is the one issue that you want to make changes to. So just think about that one issue. I'll give it like 30 seconds or so, and then we can share out, and then we can talk about some of the strategies, how we can advocate for that issue, and also run for office. So I'll give you all like 30 seconds or so.
Send the email out right away. I know there's summers, let me tell you. But for those who are need that afternoon coffee and it's coming in mind.
Anyone has like an issue in mind? Mm-hmm.
Issue that I'm currently working on is mental health, and I'm trying to get that services that is culturally relevant.
Yeah. And are you thinking like Riverside County or statewide or? Okay. Got it. Okay. Mhm. Absolutely. And like, are you thinking more of like county level, state level, or city, or state level? Okay. Okay. Well, if that, anyone else?
When you say students, are you saying college students? Or college or high school? K through 12, K through 16, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, especially with where we are in the state of California. Even here in the IE, there's a huge. Oh, also, I actually have, even though it's not working. Oh, it's oh, got it, got it. Okay, I was like, why am I holding this when it's not working? Okay, great. Well, thank you all for sharing, and we're gonna take it one step further. So go back to the issue that you have identified, and that's why I ask whether it's a state level or a county level. So identify the different levels of elected roles that make decisions regarding that policy. And if you have a little notebook, that would be best if you can write them down. And I want you to start thinking about like, what about local level, city, county, and then work your way up to state, and then maybe even federal. So if you can like lay out those different layers of government making decisions, then that would be great. And we're here to help, so we can help you walk through that process.
Was like
So anyone wants to share out as to what they were able to work on? The audience, what did y'all talk about?
Well, okay, I did. There's a couple. Okay.
And you have to look at the camera because there's a camera there.
Yeah. What is Destiny's gonna share some of.
Hi everyone. My name is Destiny Avalos. So I had actually done something like my Gold Award project on bullying, and so one of the things that I identified, well, I did it specifically for adolescents because it could be detrimental for later on in life that could impact in your adulthood, and so it was something like working with the school board and trying to create more fostering such a more positive school climate. I think it's more looking at the root cause of the issue. So it starts with like the school level. So that would probably be like the district.
Hi, my name is Lindsay German. I think for me, at the state level, it would be a lot of policy and advocacy for funding, but at the local level, there's a need for change in like law enforcement policies and common practices amongst law enforcement, and a lot of education and funding for these, domestic violence and women violence type programs.
Really love the way you just brought up the funding, because there's like this trickle down thing of like how much money is the state sending to a city or county office or a school board, and so like they're interconnected. And the accountability too.
Anyone else? Yeah, yeah. You want to share out like different levels? Like, what did you find with your issue that the K through 14 and the different levels of government agencies that are making decisions around that issue?
I noticed that any issue related to creating a larger and more informed workforce is going to be always at the local level, because the policies that the school boards write and support in legislatively have to reflect the needs of the community that they serve. And the policies currently don't reflect the idea of a collaborative process between K-12 up to 12, 6 for 13, 16, which would be the community colleges and university. And then the gentleman next to me, he actually represents, sorry, I'm gonna call you out. He's a perfect representation of how important it is to have this collaboration across the matriculative process for our students, because he is saying that there's not enough women being reflected in the physical part of creating the SoCal gas network. So you see a lot of women presence when it comes to like the office stuff, but out when they're digging the trenches and they're setting up poles or whatever they do, there aren't very many women. And so that makes me feel like I need to go back and start talking about policy with these policymakers about creating more pathways that are, I want to say, at hand for girls, so girls can feel like, ladies can feel like they can do the same work. But I hadn't heard of SoCal Gas in our CTE pathways, so we're going to talk about that later.
I love that. Takes a community, so this is your community, right? So I love that. Great. So let's start. Again, I ask about the different levels of government. Anyone knows? Well, I'm going to assume everyone knows who is the president of the United States, and this is not a trick question. Not a trick question. Who is the president of the United States? Beyonce. Yes, Queen. Yeah. Well, we know it's hopefully Biden, Joe Biden. Yep. Who's your U.S. senator? We have 2 U.S. senators. U.S. senators. At least we know Roth. We know Mark Takano. Yes, that's a win. That's a win. Yeah. So Mark Takano is Congress. Richard Roth, I'm assuming it's state senator who is running for county supervisor. Okay, it's okay. We can skip one, but we are getting to the local level. Yep, yep. But at least we know Congress. And then we also talk about state senate. What about your assembly member? You have Corey Jackson, okay. We have a few here. So we have Corey Jackson. We have Wallace, Greg Wallace, Eloise Reyes, Sabrina Cervantes. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. Okay. Who's your local county supervisor? City council member. So you went straight to city. No, it's good. It's good. It's great. It's great. So I don't know about City of Riverside, but where I live, it's Karen Spiegel. So just double check who's representing Riverside. And then your city council member, so that was mentioned, but you have 5. Yeah, you have 5 city council members. So one thing I want you all to do after this is to look up your city council member. Let's start with that, right? What about your school board member? We mentioned quite a few school issues. Who are your school board members? He's leaving in November, so there's that. But you do have, I believe, 5. It has to be at least 5. So another homework for you, look up your school board members. And then also, I heard community college. You also have a board that oversees Riverside Community College District. Anyone knows who they are? Okay. Well, it's okay. That's actually very common, right? The media always highlights, the president, the vice president, and we all know, hopefully, who they are. But oftentimes, people don't even know who their city council members, their school board members are. However, they're actually the ones making decisions that affect us on a daily basis. Our streets, our traffic lights, our police funding, law enforcement, the water that we drink, the air that we breathe. There's a water board, by the way. You should look up the water board for your area as well. So those are all local elected officials. Those seats, there are people holding in those seats who make decisions that affect us on a daily basis. And so when I ask about, for the issues that y'all have brought up, break it down, like starting at the local level, who's making those decisions, how can you make an impact at those level. And I want to give an example of how policy changes can start at a local level. So I serve on the city council in the city of Eastvale. Do we know where that is? It's okay if you don't. Yeah, we're like right next to Corona, or in between Jurupa Valley and Corona, somewhere there. That's a conversation for another day. But so I'm a mom. I have a 4-year-old, and so as a mom, I gave birth 4.5 years ago. I'm losing track of time. But at that time, I couldn't, even though California has paid parental leave, I was able to take only 1 to 2 months off. Why? Because at that time, California, well, they still do, California only pays out 60% of your paycheck when you're on parental leave, 60%. This is a time where, when your expenses actually go up. Like, it increased, like my expenses went up. So why would you take my paycheck away during a time when I actually need it the most? Right, so I couldn't even take advantage of the paid parental leave that we have here in the state. And so one of the policies that I was able to implement as a council member in the city of Eastvale is actually to introduce 100% paid parental leave in the city of Eastvale. And so we as a country, we still do not have any form of paid parental leave or paid family leave in general. But instead of waiting for Biden or Congress to do anything, which, by the way, can take a whole generation or more to get anything done, let's think about how can we make changes bottoms up instead of top down. So that's one of the examples that I will be providing you with today. It's, like think about like in my instance, pay parental leave or pay family leave. So just starting from bottoms up, that's one of the things that we were able to do.
Okay, so maybe you've already. Okay, this is a safe space. Like you can't see your hands on the camera. Who here has run for office or has thought of running for office? Who here has thought of running for office or has run for office? Okay. Hopefully we're gonna get to 100%. Okay, so these are the kind of things. So I know you are all talking about different folks who represent you, and so both things that you could run for office one day and Destiny, I think you should run. Sometimes women have to be told 3 times. I think in this cycle, 6 times. It depends. I was asked, I think 10 times a cycle, and I was like, no, I'm done. I had like a kid, like I got a 2-year-old. I just want to like live my life for one cycle. Turned out it was unopposed because I was in a district office. So I'm really glad that last call within like an hour I had filed. But again, you got to be told a couple times sometimes to like really flip that switch. So Destiny, I think you should run. That's 2 times. So city council, when you're thinking about these offices in your area, they're making policies, passing laws about city goals, major projects. So you're very focused on kind of your city. A lot of times we talk about the roads. I sit on a city commission, and we can't control a lot of times what businesses come and go. There's a lot that we can't control in our city. But you know what we can control, and what I will like shout from the rooftops, what our Parks and Rec department does. They go after those grants to get the funding to redo our playgrounds, to build a soccer field that didn't technically exist. I always thought it was a soccer field. It was just our residents made it one. So like brought their own goals and set it up and everything. But because of that, in the last like year, it's like feels like a whole other town in a lot of places where it's a lot of low income folks in like my neighborhood, and so like this is the park. Like this is why like my grandpa played a baseball team in this park, which was a euphemism for something else. Up to no good when he was in high school and stuff, but like now it's like we've got pickleball, we've got community space, and it's grounded in like what the community asked for. And so also they pulled back on things that we didn't want, but being able to use the space in the way that the community wants to. And so like having a city council be able to approve that budget, we can't make a business come, but we can make this city feel like other businesses want to come and to continue to increase that revenue. And so that's why I share that, because there are things that you can do. And so being able to find those opportunities to make the world around you a better place. County Board of Supervisors, so thinking about policies around infrastructure, planning, development, finance for our county. Again, please send all your positive energy my way. I am District 1 resident in Orange County. I have no supervisor right now as of this week. School board, making policies pertaining to local school district. I know a lot of times people talk about the curriculum that's happening in the classroom. This is actually a really kind of tricky spot when you talk about education, because the curriculum gets determined in the state, but those textbooks, the budget, the staff, the labor negotiations, not just for your teachers, because we talk about teachers, but we also have classified staff. We have lots of different folks that are represented here. And so it's not just our teachers. And I don't mean to say anything about our teachers, but like it's the school bus driver. It's who's making the food for the kids. It's who's considering the campus safety. There's a lot that goes into it. And the school board is the one that decides what that budget looks like, making sure that we're efficient. Are they engaging with parents? When they put together this budget or a local accountability plan, who was invited to the table? And so you may have filled seats, but were there enough women? Were there enough folks from a neighborhood? Is this really reflective of who they're representing? And then this is kind of the interesting thing I think about with school board is that you can invest a lot of money in things like technology, and you're like, we have these touch boards in every classroom. And then people will tout it, and like, this is how much we spent on it, and it's great. It's great for a lot of classrooms. But then they don't think about the classroom that it's not accessible. So we just spent that money, and then like, how does this go into practice? Community College Board, this is a really great one, and thinking about monitoring those budgets. Budgets are very exciting. That's where we show where our values are. Lots of people like to sleep through those budgets, but that's where you're like, what's going on here? Because that's your money. That's your money. And looking at student achievement too. State Assembly, I think since being at Ignite, this is like made the difference in my life in thinking about the way to influence the world. So you have both the state assembly. So you have an assembly member now working as part of the statewide legislative body. So thinking about all the different things that got passed I'd encourage you to take a look at some of the bills that were passed this past year, whether or not they were signed by the governor, just to see who supported those bills, who wrote, letters of support or opposition, what was the process like in order to make that bill into a law. State Senate, so you have a state senator as well. They're also a part of the legislative body making decisions. You vote on pieces of legislation and develop your own legislation as well. Yeah. So we frame that with all of these different kind of roles into thinking about this next week.
Advocacy, my favorite part. But actually, real quick, I just want to highlight what Christine said. Just in the past month, the governor signed over 100 legislation into law. So those are, a lot of them are going to go into effect this coming January. And so definitely look into that if you haven't read about that. So advocacy. So now that you know what all the offices do, and you can plan accordingly, make an advocacy plan, and go target certain branch of office to advocate for the issue that you care about. So advocacy, just if you do not know this already, the definition, it just refers to efforts to influence the introduction, enactment, or modification of a legislation. So basically, you're, in a way, all of us are lobbyists. Like, we're just maybe not getting paid to do that, but we're all lobbyists, right? We're lobbyists for our community. So think about how you can advocate for your community, lobby for your community. Go to the next. So first thing first, now that you have identified the office and different levels of government, come up with a plan. What is your advocacy plan? How will you mobilize your community, right? Power in numbers. I cannot highlight that enough. Showing up to a meeting like, hey, I'm the only one here, right? Like, this is what I care about, versus all of us. Imagine all of us showing up and be like, hey, this is what we care about. Huge difference. So how are you going to mobilize your community, number one? What kind of tools will you use to inspire change, right? It could be, and we'll go over all of that actually in a bit. And then, again, going back to power in numbers, who are the key stakeholders? Who could be your partner organizations, could be your partner in crimes, like all of that. Like who are all the key players? It could be campus community. It could also be maybe a legislator. And then also, lastly, going back to identifying the seat, is it a local or state or countrywide issue? So here are some of the ways that you can utilize to make changes. First, well, communicate with legislators. Sounds really easy. Where do you find them? Are they in Sacramento? Are they in DC? How do you find them? So you can first look up the elected officials. After identifying them, you can look them up, look up their numbers, emails. We all know how to stalk people, right? Especially on social media. Use that skill. Use that skill for issues that you care about to look up your local elected officials or statewide or whatever, whoever that might be. Yeah, we'll find them for you. We'll find them for you. Yes, we'll find them for you. So look for them, and if they are a assembly member or a state senator or a Congress member, they might be in the district on the weekends only. So just keep that in mind. If you do want to meet with them, they might have limited availability. But if you're trying to meet with like a city council member or a school board members, they might be in the community more often, and so that might be easier to reach them. And schedule a meeting with them, and especially if you're local seats, like sometimes even just reach out for coffee chat. They might be up for a coffee, you never know. So first thing first, reach out to them, communicate with them. And then if you go to the next slide, social media, our favorite. Is everyone here on social media? Yeah? Okay. It's a great way it's a great way, while not only to use to communicate with your legislator, which is pretty common now. A lot of legislators are on social media. But it's more importantly, it's a great way to raise awareness, to mobilize people, especially with TikTok. Oh my God, how many of you are on TikTok? It's powerful, right? Like you just, like there's always call to action. Even like Instagram, I personally, like I'm a little bit old school. I don't really like doing videos, so I create like infographics on Canva instead, and post that and to raise awareness about the issue. Host a live chat with an elected official or an expert in the issue. It's always nice to also hear from people who work in the field, people who are, or maybe community members who are affected by the issue. So you can do all of that, and there's so many options when it comes to social media, right? And so, but definitely utilize social media as well. Public comment. Has anyone made a public comment at a meeting before? Yeah, one person. Anyone else? Yeah, for SoCal Gas, I would imagine. City Council? Art? What, City Council? Okay. Do you want to share briefly your experience? What was it like?
So I submitted via e-comment, and that is actually an option that the city, I believe, is actually trying to remove in the city of Riverside. Through that, though, it actually received very interesting feedback from the council members. They were kind of upset with some of the comments that not just me, but a lot of the community made regarding their flag policies. So it was also taking that moment to sit back, take a deep breath. This isn't about me. This is about the issue. And this is, I think for me, it was more the emotional impact of it for myself, hearing those negative comments after sharing my personal feelings towards it, and then being able to re-ground myself in what the issue was.
I shared a public comment through the school board, and it was mostly about Black History Month being celebrated in the schools. I have a high schooler in Riverside School District, and they just didn't feel celebrated. So they told me they would get back to me, but I never heard back from anybody.
Follow up with them. I did. Oh, you did? It's Persist, yeah. And they still never got back? Which school district is? Is it the county or Riverside? Anyway, we'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, I know. Let's strategize this. Let's talk about this. I know Art has been to my city council meeting. Yeah, and that's actually the reason why. And thank you for sharing that. But I brought that up with Art because there's actually not a whole lot of people. I don't know about Riverside. It sounds like there's quite a bit of people, but like a lot of other cities, including my own city, there's not a whole lot of people at these council meetings. And so Art showed up once, and I remember that. Unless there's drama, right? Yeah. And so, yeah.
One of the reasons that people don't go is because the time, and you can do it over online, but they mute yourself. You can do anything you wanna post, but they like suppress specific comments, and people is like, if they don't wanna listen to me, where I'm gonna go?
That is actually a really good point. Just let me quickly address that. In fact, in one of the silver linings from COVID was that a lot of the meetings were open up, whether it's via e-comment or on Zoom, so it's more accessible. But now a lot of cities are trying to take that away, and so that's definitely an issue. But do you have one?
They take things very personal. So they take things very personal. So they lack empathy. They lack even just general etiquette. Like, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Yeah, professionalism. And so to me, it's condescending when you're there to serve the people, not the other way around. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's actually a really good segue. And right before, if you want to go back real quick, and we'll talk about that, right, is that, elected officials at all levels, including city council members, we're here to serve all of you, the people. And so what happens when you're trying to advocate for an issue, whether it's going to a school board meeting or going to a city council meeting, and they never got back to you, or that they're being disrespectful, highly encourage you to maybe think about running for office, right? And I always tell people this, elected officials, you have the power to vote them in. You also have the power to vote them out, right? So public comment, yes, you could stop by. It's usually there's a time limit of 3 minutes. Yes, yeah, to submit a public comment. But again, if you can bring a crowd, again, power in numbers, bring a crowd to a city council meeting, to a school board meeting, it will really help increase that chance. But with that being said, again, like I said, if they don't get back to you, which is what Christine will talk about running for office.
Yeah, also call us because we're not advocating for a position. Like I think we mentioned, like we are nonpartisan. We have a very kind of limited scope, but we give you all the tools to do the things that you need to do because that's what you do at the, yes, go. Yeah.
I want to say, because my job often is to make sure that school board members are prepared to speak with legislators. Make sure that when you go to these meetings, they are not trying to take everything personally, but there's a lot of you. Make sure you're organized. Make sure you are concise. Make sure you are succinct so that you have one or two asks that are very clearly identified. Because if they feel like they can't answer all of your questions, they're more than likely not going to be able to assign a staffer to get back to you. Because it's a lot. It feels like it's all over the place. So what their discussion behind doors is, let's let them get it together. Let's let them get their conversation more organized, and then when they come back, we'll be ready. So make sure that you're ready. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, we need to share this knowledge because we all have our own, again, we all have our own issues. It's not a negative thing. We all have our own issues. And so it's like, okay, well, what do you know? How do you know to get to this person? How do you influence change that you want to see in your community? Okay, so, but it's individual to each of us. So the things that hit closest to home, the things that we advocate for, a lot of times I talk about special education or accessibility in education, specifically because my sister partially lost her eyesight in the middle of high school. And I can tell you a story of her teacher was ready to fail her because, well, your paperwork wasn't done in time. Even though, like, she literally was losing her eyesight. And, like, we're figuring out this. But for most folks, if you have to ask for help with disabilities, you don't know where to go. Like, it is a long system. And so I think about that all the time of, like, how did we get there? But that's my own personal experience in thinking about what is it like to be a student when you need the support of any, of any kind. And so what you bring to the table is going to be really unique to you and your passion, your experience, your knowledge. But when you are advocating, I love this. It's like, keep it spicy. Your voice brings flavor to the everyday issue. So you're talking about your everyday experience. Keep it spicy. Don't make it vanilla. Don't make it plain. Make it your voice. So come with the research and the background, but be able to speak to yourself. Because if they see the same thing over and over again, it's like, okay. You got to continue to work on this influence. Okay, so we are really low on time because I know we had some tech issues. So I know folks have been like taking photos of slides. So we do have homework. But the bright thing is, one, I'm not going to grade it. Two, although like ask us for coffee, we want to meet with you. You all get to take goodies home. So thinking about it, what holds you back from declaring your goal to be an elected official? What are your fears? And I'm going to talk about that in a minute because I think sometimes folks, I brought this up, some folks I've heard actually don't run because they don't want to lose. And there is a shame of how do I tell my family at the end of the day, it sucks having been on the losing night end after all that effort. It's traumatic, but you can show up to work the next day. Like take your break, eat something good. Spend time with your family, but like you can show up the next day because you know what? A lot of folks don't speak up for the things that you're speaking up if you run for office. And in fact, I felt really effective as a failed candidate because a lot of things that I was advocating for, it did shift the dialogue. It did shift the agenda. And so like, I don't get credit for it, which is fine. I'd rather things change, but like it does shift it. So, that's one fear. Fear sometimes is that safety and mental health. I'm so sorry. We'll open it up towards the end. Cause I can tell they're going to want to move people. When you think about declaring yourself as a candidate, what thought or feeling comes up? And so I want you on your drive home tonight to think about that question. What is the thing that's like, maybe it's money. It's really hard to talk about money and asking people for money, and elections cost a lot of money. I do it on a shoestring budget when I can, but the cost of the cost to file it costs money. But that doesn't have to stop you from doing it. There's a lot of tools and resources and people who will train you and help support you. And at the end of the day, when you're campaigning for an office, you're not campaigning for yourself. The money that you collect, that's not taking you out to dinner. That's getting, signs in front of somebody's house. That's sending out mailers. That's helping your volunteer. So you're not personally collecting that money. And so thinking about it that way sometimes helps kind of break that barrier. What do you need to feel prepared to run to overcome these fears? I will say, being in this room right now, talking about the issues that you all have talked about, and already some of the advocacy we've heard from experiences, definitely you're qualified to run. If you care, we hear this from other groups, if you care, you are qualified. The other stuff is a lot of work. I know we can speak from experience. And that doesn't mean it's so easy and you're going to be an elected official one day. But it is doable. And it is worthwhile if that's something you want to do. And if not, uplift somebody else to get there. Because there's a lot of space to cover in order to get more women and folks into office. Because we know, again, there's a lot of offices that are still hitting their first, which is real sad in 2024. So some things to consider. And hopefully we'll be able to send these slides after, but the type of job, part-time, full-time. A lot of local seats are part-time. You start going to the state seats, technically part-time, but it's full-time. Congress, full-time. How much will the job pay? That's real. Will you have enough food to eat or enough money to have food? Take care of your family. We're both parents. There's a lot to consider there. So planning it out in the terms 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, that can also, come into play. Term limits, are there term limits to the seats? This one's really important in the electoral system because a lot of our elected bodies in California are moving to this direction if they haven't already. So having district-specific seats, so trustee area 2 versus a school board that's open at large, because it does determine you're representing your full school board, for example, or your full city council, but the people that have to vote you in is much smaller. Voting system, ranked choice or single candidate. Ranked choice is not real popular in California, but it is in other places. And I will say, because I know we're out of time, there's both the science of running for office, a lot of those boxes you got to check off to make sure that you did the things properly. Campaign jail is real jail, so make sure you fill out your paperwork properly, do the forms, ask for help. People are really good at it, so you don't have to do it yourself. And then there's also this art, this flow. Again, going back to keeping it your own flavor. How you want to do it, how you engage people. Because you know your neighbor better than a lot of other folks. You know what else is happening in your community in order to speak up. And so keeping both the science and the art in there. And so I will say, as we close up, I'll ask it here. We'll close out. What is your next step? What comes next? Is it telling somebody else to run? Is it doing another public comment? Is it following up with your elected official? Is it maybe considering, I want to talk about bullying. Who do I need to meet with? Because Destiny should run for office 3 times. Hopefully more people will consider other folks running for office. What do I need to do to influence the policy, this issue that I thought about today, in order to make some change happen? So I'm going to ask some folks, what are your next steps? What do you do when you leave this room, other than go to the main session? And look at their city council person. Okay, we need at least one, and then we can do giveaway. What's your next step?
I am so sorry, but I wasn't prepared for the question to be answered myself. But yeah, my next step is definitely going to understand what my problem is and how can I reach out to elected officials to actually work and resolve the problems which I'm currently facing. I think we all should be doing that and make sure that we are contributing to our community and to our society. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Christine and Jocelyn. Unfortunately, we have to conclude the session, but I would like you all to join us in Hub 302 because we have free boba over there and to enjoy the rest of the event. I know this meeting started a little late, but feel free to continue these great conversations on your way back to Hub 302. Please also remember that before you leave today to fill out a survey so you can claim your free Persist t-shirt at registration. See you back in Hub 302. You all can follow me.